175 million kilometers of cable. So you've seen in the presentation that the people who was going to do the presentation was José Antonio Diez-Vil, who hasn't been able to make it here today, so I will be replacing him. So I'd like to thank Mafre Global Risk and especially Alfredo for organizing this conference, the 26th edition, that are now reference in this industry, both for the opportunity they create, the topics they handle, the quality of the speakers they invite. So I hope I will be up to the expectations. I am going to repeat some of the things that were already said yesterday in the opening. I want to remember today a person we all miss, a person who was always smiling, a real facilitator, real problem solver and troubleshooting. I hope wherever you are very happy, and we send you a hug. Juanjo. And secondly, I want to congratulate one of my friends, a friend of mine, who is also my neighbor and my house in the mountains, Joaquin. Congratulations. I know you're not here today, but rest assured that the people who will be succeeding you is one of the most humane people I've known. And finally, I want to thank all the teams at Mafre who year after year we've been working with, troubleshooting, and I recognize them as real strategic partners. So, you see my title is the losses in underwater cables, but underwater cables is just one of the assets of Red Eléctrica de España. So I'm going to talk about what Grupo Red Eléctrica is. And then I will talk about the underwater interconnections, what they are for, what purpose do they serve, how do we protect them, the losses we've been suffering in the history of the underwater cables, and we will finalize the presentation with some demands that we can ask to the insurers. So our core business is being a TSE. And I'm going to use these acronyms throughout my presentation several times. There is TCO, TSO, Transmission and System Operator. So we transport energy, high tension energy, and we operate it. But I have prepared a video.
Red Eléctrica es el TSO del sistema eléctrico español y uno de los operadores.
Red Eléctrica is the TSO of the Spanish electricity system. We have worked for over 30 years and have operated a system of over 100 megawatts installed and high-tension network. We are pioneers in integrating the renewables energy in a safe manner. We have long-standing experience in the construction of electric infrastructures and the development of interconnection systems between electrical systems. Full-fledged systems with avant-garde technologies. Interconnection between the Iberian Peninsula and the Balearic Islands. It is the first continued current, direct current connection in Spain, and alternate current between Ibiza and other islands. An international connection between France and Spain is the biggest tension network in the world, totally underground and with 2 converter stations. Red Eléctrica Española is a leading reference in the world with a high efficiency in the execution of works, and also a leading company in reliability and service quality. We've been working for 15 years, for more than 15 years in Latin America, and since 1999 we are the first transporting in southern Peru with excellent uptime ratios. We are solvent and we can generate funds. We are recognized in the capital markets and we are in the best sustainability indices. We are the reference company in the electricity industry in Spain, and we have an European award for management excellence. We have a very high qualified team with experts in operating and managing networks. Red Eléctrica is a solid, consolidated and solvent company, expert in using electrical systems and maintaining a very broad network with a sustainable future in electricity. In Red Eléctrica de España, we take care of your energy.
Bueno, pues esto es lo que somos. Somos un TSO.
So this is what we are. We are a TSO, a carrier, and the system operator. But as our president said, we want to be a TSO, a better TSO every day, and the best TSO in the world. But being a TSO doesn't mean that we cannot do other things. So at Grupo Red Eléctrica we have three axes in the 21st century's economy: electrification, and we think we are ready for that. We can put all the necessary intelligence in the network so that we can face the challenges of the energy transition. We can integrate as much renewable energy as the national plan foresees. We can intensify all the uses of energy in housing, in industry, mobility. The second vector is telecommunications, whose exponential growth is more exponential than ever. A few years ago, having a mobile phone in your pocket was already a milestone, but now it's more than a smartphone. You have a hospital at the reach of your hand. You have a meteorological station, a weather station. Everything is in a smartphone. And the third vector is the market. So in this video, we see our positioning. This is the second video where you can see this explained.
Nuestra vocación empresarial al servicio del
Our business vocation towards for serving the electric system is complemented with other activities that add value, and that places us in a very leading position in telecommunications. After acquiring Hispasat, our company has consolidated as a TSO for strategic networks. We have dark optic fibers, satellites, so electricity, telecommunications and talents are the new raw materials and also our main feature. Undoubtedly, the society is being transformed ecologically and technologically, and Red Eléctrica is in both fields. We are committed to innovation and transformation, and we want to have a protagonist role in the new energy revolution. This is the beginning of a new era, and Red Eléctrica is ready to face it.
Bueno, pues ya hemos visto lo que éramos ayer.
So we have seen what we used to be, what we are now, what we want to be in the future. But now we're going to focus on the underwater cables. Underwater cables are part of a broad transportation network, 45,500 kilometers, 700 substations with 5,800 positions, and transformers worth of 91,000 mega amperes. But these systems are isolated, but not so much as to be vulnerable, because the more isolated you are, the more vulnerable you became. So a solid system, a consolidated system would be, for example, the internal European market, where all countries are connected to each other. So if there is a problem in one country, it will be supported by others. Spain has always been isolated by the Pyrenees range, and nobody had guaranteed the supply by intervening on the Pyrenees. So that's why we have overcome that situation, and we are no longer isolated electrically from the rest of Europe through underground stations or aerial stations to communicate the beginning and the end of those networks. But we're going to talk about underwater connections here. So what is an underwater connection? I'm going to show you a third video that was edited when we launched the interconnection between the Iberian Peninsula and the island of Mallorca that really secured the supply to the Balearic Islands.
Una de las mayores obras de ingeniería submarina.
One of the biggest underwater connections in the world, the connection between the Iberian Peninsula and the Balearic Islands. It is the Romulus project, and it is of great complexity and singularity that has reinforced the capabilities of Red Eléctrica de España.
Hasta ahora el sistema eléctrico balear.
So far, the Balearic Islands was relying just on two isolated electrical systems, Mallorca, Menorca, and Ibiza, Formentera. So the supply was not comparable to other systems. So we needed to secure and improve the supply and the quality by overcoming the difficulties, the distances, the depth of the ocean, and also being environmentally friendly. It also increased the competition of the islands in the market because they are more sustainable and efficient in the market. After many years of study, the cable between San Pedre and Santa Ponsa was, the outline was designed. It is 237 kilometers long and a maximum depth of 1,485 meters. The aim was to get a connection of plus minus 250 kilovolts with a return cable of 400 megawatts. So two power cables and a third return cable that increase the sustainability and the availability of the supply. Given the distance and the powers needed for this double connection, we have to use direct current in order to reduce the losses of energy in the transportation, increase the power, and reduce the number of cables of wires necessary as compared to the alternate current.
El tendido submarino era uno de los grandes retos de la obra y se ha realizado con los dos únicos barcos del mundo especializados en estas tareas. Was
tended by two vessels, the Giulio Fernandez Skagerrak from Italy and Norway, respectively. With these vessels, we transported the almost 7,000 tons of weight of each wire, so that they could be placed in just one time without any joint, any intermediate joints. We also used a remote control vehicle to monitor the positioning of the cables on the ground, so that we could overcome the irregularities of the ground. Near the coast, we used floaters, auxiliary vessels, and scuba divers. And for intermediate areas, we used special underwater vehicles. And we also could overcome some fishing risks. When there was sun, we opened a trench so that we could place the cables in the trench, protected of course. And at every end of the interconnection, we had trenches of over 3 kilometers that once joined to the rest of the cable went or were directed towards the substation, where they were personally connected to the substation. The specificity of this project required the construction of 2 transforming stations in order to convert the alternate current to direct current, the one that is used by the cable. These substations are the first type of these stations that exist in Spain and the third in Europe. They have avant-garde technical devices to reduce, to minimize the losses of energy in the conversion process. They also watch all the electrical parameters of the interconnection in order to ensure the reliability and availability of it. Being environmentally friendly was a priority of this project, so the place we chose to put the cables was the optimal one, because there are Posidonium prairies the Bay of Ibiza. We wanted to protect it because it is environmentally very valuable. So we chose the places where we put the cable in order to guarantee that this species, the Posidonia, would be preserved. The converter stations on the ground and the land are also specially placed in places where the landscape impact is minimized.
Bueno, pues aquí es donde a mí se me torció totalmente la presentación.
So this is where I decided to change the presentation, because I wanted to bring you some samples of cables so that you could see what this table was like. But then they gave me this, just this. Well, this is very heavy, and of course you can move it around. But well, this is a sample of the cable that connects Ibiza with Mallorca. It weighs more than 61 kilograms, so imagine the outline is more than 120 kilometers, so the weight is more than 3 tons, 7.3 tons, sorry. But so, well, at least you can have an idea of the type of cable that we use. Now we have 6 operating interconnections, one between the Peninsula and Balearic Islands and Morocco, Northern Africa, and other 4 interconnections between the Canary Islands and the Balearic Islands. The 3, well, out of these interconnections, this is the most important one. The outline is 240 kilometers, and you can see the depth, 1,500 kilometers, and you can see the second interconnection between Ibiza and Formentera, the third interconnection between Mallorca and Ibiza. You can see the depth, profundidad, and the distance. Another one between the islands of Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. You can see the depth and the length. The small interconnection between Lanzarote and the La Graciosa Island, 1.5 kilometers and 10 meters. You can see it by scuba diving. And finally, the international connection between Spain and Northern Africa, Morocco, which is in reality 2 interconnections with 7 cables, 1 redundant cable, depth of 600 meters, and you could see the distance. But we need more interconnections in order to guarantee the supply with the levels of quality that we desire. The first interconnection, future interconnection that we have planned is between France and Spain through the Bay of Biscay, which is a real milestone because we will have to overcome the problem in Cabreton, in the Breton Cape, and it will the capacity will be twice as much as the capacity that we have now. But now we have more planned interconnections between, for example, the Peninsula and Ceuta, and Lanzarote, Fuerteventura, Mallorca, Menorca, and La Gomera and Tenerife Islands. So in the future, we will have 11 interconnections with more than 2,600 kilometers of underwater cables. So we will need to ensure their capacity so that the availability of the electricity will be guaranteed. These installations are invisible, they are underwater, but we have nevertheless paid attention to the environmental respect, the environmental protection. So you can see here that we did a study, we carried out a study in order to design the layout or the outline of the cables between the peninsula and the Balearic Islands. What are the players in this market? Of course, the cable manufacturers, the TSOs, the distributors, the promoters of the offshore platforms that have to connect themselves to the continental platforms, and then the owners of the vessels and the insurance companies. When we try to insure these installations, when we started analyzing the possible insurance for this one, we already had a policy, and we said, well, just include this new interconnection, and they said, no, you have to go to this other place, because there were some more limits, because of course this was the maritime market, and it was different from the other markets. Insurance companies, of course, don't like the risks that are inherent to the electrical lines because they are underwater, they are maritime, and they are subject to the maritime legislation. And of course, they don't like the offshore risks either. So there is a limit. That was a limitation in the number of companies that would insure us, and many limitations that were linked to the field we were operating in. And there were a scarcity of specialists, of course, these specialized cable manufacturers or vessels that we needed.
What we have seen along the years is that this market has premium and retentions that are not elastic. That is, when you try to increase your retention with your premium, there is a not direct or reasonable correlation. It is reasonable, of course, because this type of losses, they do not happen often, but when they happen, they're big and the limits are included. And something that could be curious but is not idle is that, for instance, the connection between Ibiza and Mallorca, when it breaks, it's not a problem. But if we do the same between Morocco and Spain, we have to work with Moroccan people, and we have culture shock because we don't have the same maintenance policies. When we have contingency plans, then we have to agree with them because they do not understand the same by contingency. And even more, they try to insure their assets, and you do the same because of possible losses. So this culture shock is something that needs to be taken into account very carefully, and even if it seems something secondary, is very important. And we're not talking about bridges, planes, buildings. The assets that we have are different because you cannot just look at it and see whether it's okay or not. These maritime lines, they are 1,500 kilometers long, and it's hard to see what they look like. There are not that many players, and as we've seen, the losses, they're becoming more mutualized. We've seen this in these renovations. We have the conditions of, or the conditionants of an increase in losses, both in the cables that were being built and the ones that were operating already. Next, I would like to talk about the type of losses or claims that we've had. In order to describe the risk to these cables, I always make the same example. It is just one more species in the ecosystem of the sea. So a cable that is under the water, 800-meter long, the only risk could be maritime current, some soil movement, but technically, if it has good dimensions because they're very robust, then we should not have any problem or along the life of this underwater cable. We can think of it like a big snake that does not move and is surrounded by algae, coral reefs, crabs. It's just standing there. But this big sea snake, same as its neighbor, it has some predators. And it's not just white sharks or octopus from Captain Nemo. No, the predators is 500 meters upwards and is a ship. And ships are different depending on where we locate this interconnection. In the Balearic Islands, the main risk are yacht. They just usually have some problem, for instance, with the anchors. Sometimes with the shipping. The fishing ships then, or the fishing gear, it's very problematic. But as I've said, the number of these issues is very low, but a cable could be there for 20 years and suddenly something happens, and when this happens, since it is interconnecting different systems, it could be a very small system that is disconnected or is international, then it has a very wide international repercussion. These were some two incidents that we had between the Majorca and Menorca cable and the interconnection between Spain and Morocco. And there are two important factors when we discuss losses. First is the timeline, and second, the cost. Timeline is very important for us because we need to recover the service as fast as possible, and the cost for the insurer is very important, but for us also is essential because if they pay too much, then when we have to do the insurance again, it will go up. So what do we do when a loss happens? Well, first of all, we need to identify what has happened, what has gone wrong. And this is not easy because when we have a failure of a supply in Spain, then you know what happens, you get your team there and you have the support there. If a building has burned, then you can see it, what the fire was like. This can be traced because of the fluctuations in the service, erroneous signals, etc. And so we have in Red Eléctrica a lab that is trying to speed up these IDs. When we see there are some anomalies, then we mobilize our lab and we do signal transmission through optical fiber or through the cable. Here you can see, for instance, this little cable is optical fiber and the rest are conductors. Through these signals, we see what is the range where the incidents could be located. We have a nice system to geolocate the ships that are going through areas that they should not be. Second, we have the range where once we have the range, we need to go down and locate the specific point where this happened. Depending on the interconnection, if the depth is not very high, then we can use some people. Otherwise, we will use some remote operation vehicles, or we call it ROVs. Here I'm going to show you a short video of the ROV that identified a problem between the cable that joins Spain and Morocco. Another important action that we need to carry out is to locate a ship that will help us repair the issue. And as I said, there are not many ships. We have big ships that belong to the cable manufacturer companies, but unfortunately those are working on their investment issues, so it's hard for us to work with them. So we need to have some build shippers who have the ability and the technology available to carry out this type of repair operations for the connection and for replacing the cable if need be. And another important part is spare parts. They're very heavy, they weigh a lot, and they're built specifically for their own purposes, so it's difficult to have them because we need to have many spare parts. This is a problem. From Red Eléctrica, we're drafting a project that hopefully will be well received by the market, which is to try and see whether we can have some compatibility among cables, so that manufacturer A could have a spare part for manufacturer B. This would be very interesting for us because we would reduce the need for this type of stock of spare parts, but for the market I think it would be interesting as well, because it will make competition more increased, because now if that happens, then there will be higher competition, so that we tell them what we want and maybe they could be manufactured by A, B or a C player. As we've already said, this is a very highly specialized market. There are not many stakeholders or agents, and at the time where there is an issue, there are not many people that can help you. And then there is another issue that is essential for us. During the loss process, we need to closely communicate with the insurance company. More than communication, we need to have absolute trust climate being built there, because we're talking about an asset that has been damaged at 700 or 1500 meters underwater. We need to deliver all the information available. We need to cooperate with the market so that we can try and not have a problem with money being paid, because there is the issue of responsibility and liability. Then we have another issue that we need to discuss, which is cooperation, coordination among different administrations and authority. Could be local, community, the different ones, for instance, maritime salvage units, etc. Also, through media, we need to reach the public opinion. On also small ships. We need to cooperate with them, because sometimes they will see a huge ship and they do not know what that is doing there. So if we are asking for wishes, then what can we ask for to the insurance market? I would say three things. Capability, because at present we see that we are doing a lot of interconnections, more for the future, but the Paris Treaty and for us the ecological transition will mean that many renewable energy, especially in the Northern Sea, they will be introduced in our industry, and we need bigger capability in order to give coverage to these processes. We need more agents, and the uncertainty of Brexit could be the perfect time for continental market to take a step forward and to really cover this type of risks. What else? What do we wish for? We can negotiate tailor-made our coverage instead of just the whole package, because for instance the maritime policy says X and Y and we cannot do anything else. And with regard to this, we should try to eliminate artificial borders. That is, if we go to one insurance company that covers the maritime and the terrestrial coverage in two different policies, then we probably should ask for one single one for all the assets. And also, when there's specific risk and complicated situations, we need to open our minds so that we can design together imaginative alternatives for ensuring this type of risks. And with this I would like to finish my presentation, because from Red Eléctrica we need to keep on working, we need to keep on developing our facilities, as many as possible, in order to guarantee the delivery of our service. And we need to work like an army on the soil by setting up facilities on the air. As you have seen, where it is impossible to access, we need helicopters in order to carry these towers, in order to place them where they belong. And on the sea, of course, under the water, by developing this type of facilities and cables. From the unit that I manage together with Silvia and Jose, we will try and keep on giving our business the insurance that is necessary. But we cannot walk alone. We need partners, we need strategic players who will come with us onto this path, who will insure us. We have been working on this for a long time, and we need to have insurance for this technically complex project. Thank you.